Yeah, hi, this is Congressman Bob Filner. I represent the 51st Congressional District in California, which is San Diego and the border region. And I have the honor of being chairman in this Congress of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, which is a very a job that I enjoy, but I'm so awed by the contributions of our veterans, whether we're talking about World War II or the present day activities in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're at the last stage of the first session of the 111th Congress, and I want to talk about what we're going to do in the second half of the 111th Congress with the Veterans Network. And thank you so much for inviting me to be with you. You know, people often ask me how does a bill come out of Congress? People say that legislation is like sausage making. That is, you don't want to see how it happens. But there's some really interesting aspects of the legislative process until the bill's passed by the House, passed by the Senate, signed by the President. Let me just take one sort of simple thing, because most of my ideas come from my constituents or from veterans I meet as I travel around the country. And I was in Illinois to visit a Congressman Hare from near Chicago, and I met with some veterans who some of which who had Parkinson's disease since they were about 50 years old, and that seems kind of young for Parkinson's disease. And they had been in Vietnam, and they were convinced that it was the Agent Orange that caused the Parkinson's disease. And in fact, they gave me a list of about 500 veterans in Illinois, just from their knowledge, that had Parkinson's from the age of 50 on, which is, again, much younger than you would predict. So I decided that this is indeed an Agent Orange correlation. I don't need any more scientific help. I got all the real world knowledge I needed, that is meeting the veterans who had Parkinson's. So I went back to Congress, wrote a bill that said Parkinson's shall be deemed a presumptive for Agent Orange reimbursement. And I wrote the bill. I talked to a senator who introduced the same bill. So we have a bill in the House and we have a bill in the Senate. That bill went to our subcommittee on the Veterans Committee, on the Health Subcommittee, and they held hearings on it. And similar hearings would be scheduled in the Senate. Ordinarily that would go after the hearing in the subcommittees. They had a vote and passed that bill in the subcommittee, and then it would come to the full committee. Interesting enough in this case, and when the House, if the House would pass it and the Senate would pass it, if they were exactly the same with no amendments, that would go to the President. Or if they were slightly different or a lot different, they go to what is called a Senate-House Conference Committee. A common compromise would come out and then has to be passed by each House again, and then to the President. In this case, we had, interestingly enough, the Veterans Administration was looking at Parkinson's and other diseases to see about the evidence. And I don't know if they wanted to preempt the legislation or they came to the same conclusion, but the Veterans Administration, in the middle of this legislative process and after the hearing, so there was so much detail, expertise, that this was clearly a correlative thing, that the VA on its own, without the legislation, said from now on we are going to see Parkinson's as presumptive from Agent Orange. So in this case, the legislative process stirred the executive branch into doing the right thing. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes we would have to try to pass the bill, and then they would have to do it, or if we couldn't, sometimes we can't pass the bill. I mean, there's just not enough support. In this case, we got the result we wanted by moving the process along, getting the expert testimony, getting testimony from veterans who had Parkinson's, bringing in sort of the knowledge at the grassroots. I trust the grassroots, that is the veterans themselves, for the expertise that I need. And that served really as the way to get this this thing done. Let me point out, in the first session of the 111th Congress, which was 2009, we had some very major victories. Number one, on the budget, we had about a 10 or 12% increase in the amount of funds for healthcare. That's a significant increase, and that will take care of our veterans' health care for the what we call fiscal 10, that is up till October 1st of 2010. But we also, looking at the history, including this year, of VA budgets, they have generally, or 20 out of the last 23 years, they have not been passed on time. That means the Veterans Administration would not know what its budget was till 4 or 5 or even 6 months into the budget year. That's no way to run a healthcare system. You can't hire, you can't plan, you can't build, because you don't know what your budget's going to be. So led by the veterans organizations and a good coalition of people who got together on this, we passed, after a year-long set of hearings and passing legislation, what is called forward funding, which will go into effect for the next fiscal year. That means that we will pass a budget for the VA a year ahead of schedule, meaning that even if it's a few months late, it'll still be way before the fiscal year starts, so the VA healthcare people will know exactly what budget they have, will know how many people they can hire, what buildings they can build, what equipment they can buy. So it sounds so simple, funding a year in advance, but in the context of the budget of the United States, it's a revolutionary thing. And we think that's going to put VA healthcare on a real solid footing from now on. In addition, we instituted the first benefits went out for our 21st century GI Bill. That is, many of us a couple years ago got together and said, what can we do for our current crop of veterans from OEF, OIF, maybe back to Persian Gulf War I, that is similar to what this country did for our World War II veterans. That is, gave them a GI Bill which paid for the full cost of college and helped them through programs, buy a house. I'm here because of the GI Bill. When my dad came back from World War II, he was able to get some education, but we were able to buy a house for the first time in our family's history. And you become part of the middle class, and 8 million veterans took advantage of that GI Bill. But over the years, those benefits had declined, and it was not the same benefit as it was in 1944. So we passed a bill that said, starting this year, we will pay for the full cost of college and for a college or a vocational program. We will pay for books and living expenses, and we will make sure the home loan program is relevant to the market prices of today. And that went into effect for this first academic year. There was some, as you might guess, some startup snafus, but something like 250,000 of our young people are now taking advantage of that GI Bill. And it's going to have it's going to have impact way into the future, because if a GI did, or if a soldier did not want to use the benefits for whatever reason, they've been to college or they didn't want to, they could pass it on, in fact, to their spouse or children. So those people will be going to college in the future. So I think it's an incredible benefit. It's we're working out the snafus. We have to tweak it a little bit, but it's a great new benefit for our young people. And part of the problem when you start a program like this, the 21st Century GI Bill, sometimes the veterans are not sure how to process the stuff. Sometimes the college had to process stuff. They have to certify that the student is indeed a student, or the veteran is indeed a student. And the colleges didn't understand that they had to do that quickly. And many of them took their time in getting that certification in, so no check could be written for the student unless they were certified. So now that we had a year experience, I think, on this, it'll go smoother in the future. We were able to make sure that anybody who needed the money immediately could get a $3,000 emergency cash and to tide them over. But I think, any new program is going to have this stuff, and it'll be certainly better even in the spring term of 2010. I want to talk about the Agent Orange Act of 2009, H.R. 2254. And what that does is go even beyond the story I told about Parkinson's disease. And it says that if you have if you served in Vietnam, not just, as the present law says, have your boots on the ground at a place where you could prove there was spraying of Agent Orange. We're saying if you served anywhere in Vietnam or on the blue waters off the coast or in the blue skies up above, if you served in Laos or Cambodia, if you were in Guam where they handled the transshipments, and there were several bases even in the United States where shipments of Agent Orange opened up and may have exposed people. We're saying just the fact that you were there, and I say we should care. That is, you will get Agent Orange benefits, not going through all the bureaucratic hoops that the present law says. You have to prove that as I said, your boots were on the ground. So if you were in the Navy or the Air Force, it didn't apply to you. You had to prove, rather than just get the government to prove that, or not to prove that there was Agent Orange spraying where you were. But the impact of Agent Orange is so vast and so it just, it spreads. So we're saying if you were there, we should take care of you. And the VA has been fighting this because they said, well, there's not the right scientific evidence. I think the evidence is there clearly, but more importantly, you have veterans from Vietnam who have been fighting the VA on this issue for 30 or 40 years even. People get sicker from fighting a bureaucracy which is not responsive than whatever their original disease or sickness or injury was. And I'm saying, look, these people have fought for decades. Give them some peace. They're in their late 50s, 60s. Let us serve these veterans. Let us say, you served our nation. We got to take care of you now. And unfortunately, the established bureaucracies don't want to do it. They say it costs too much. Listen, if anybody gives me an argument about cost for our veterans, I say, hey, this is part of the cost of war. We pay almost anything that is asked for war. When you come home injured or affected by something that this chemical that we used, we should take care of you too. It's part of the cost. I don't care what it is. We take care of you. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm very optimistic about the future of the Agent Orange Act of 2009. We passed, in terms of co-sponsors, that is, the number of people who say they're for it before it even comes to the floor of the House, is 225, which is more than the majority of the Congress. So we have a majority of the bill, people for the bill, before we even have taken it for a vote. So that in itself is very, very powerful. So in next year, 2010, we're going to bring up that bill in my committee very early. We will try to get the VA to cooperate in terms of how much money it's going to cost. And we're going to say, you got to do this. I think it'll pass the House very quickly because we have the majority. The Senate has a whole different culture, a whole different way of doing it, and we'll have to concentrate, I think, after we pass the bill in the House. All veterans will have to concentrate on their senators. If you call your senator, if you go to his or her office in your hometown, if you write a letter to the editor in your hometown paper saying, What's the deal? How come we can't pass this Agent Orange? Your senator or your congressperson will read that letter, by the way. That's the first thing people read, letters to the editor. Get on talk shows. Create a sense that this is important to the community. That public opinion really affects both the congresspeople and the senators. So as soon as we're going to pass this in the House pretty quickly, early next year, and then we'll focus on lobbying the Senate. And everybody from wherever part of the country they live, a small town, big city, you can have an impact on this by making sure that your local radio station hears it, your local newspapers have letters to the editor, the VA, different VA organization, different veterans organization pass resolutions, or PTAs pass resolutions, or church groups pass resolutions, or city councils. There's all this kind of work you can do in your own community, and it really reverberates on Capitol Hill. So I need your help when it comes to the Senate next year. I talked a little earlier about how a bill goes through Congress, and there are, of course, variations. I mean, there's no one way, and the House and Senate both works differently. As an example, there's a bill that just passed the Senate called S-1963. What the Senate did was put a lot of different bills into one, sort of an omnibus bill or a catch-all bill, that had all the things about healthcare in it. The most important being help for caregivers of those who were severely injured in war. I mean, if a husband comes home with brain injury from Iraq, the wife or maybe a child or maybe a cousin becomes, or a parent becomes almost a full-time caregiver. That is very difficult. One, most people don't have a lot of training in how to do it. If it's a 24-hour day job, basically, how do you ever get respite for the caregiver, let alone for the veteran, him or herself? And how about if the caregiver gave up his or her job to become the caregiver? Where does the family get income? So the Caregiver Act tries to deal with all those things. It tries to give money for training, tries to give money for respite, that is help, just some time off, hire somebody else as the caregiver, and make up for the lost income to that family. But that was put together with a series of bills in the House. Usually a bill is introduced with a companion bill in the other body. Like if I introduce a bill in the House, I'll try to get a senator to do a companion bill, which is my same bill but gets a Senate number, or vice versa. In this case, what they did was put a whole lot of bills together and send it to the House. So there's no companion. And what is going on now is we are discussing between the House and the Senate which parts we agree with, which ones we have trouble with, or additions that we want. So we will pass early next year a version of the same bill that they sent us. And then it'll go back to them to vote on the changed bill, and then hopefully go to the president. So most of the things in this caregivers bill are things that we all agree. But I'm trying to, for example, they didn't put anything about the homeless in there. I want to say we should be giving more money to shelters and other nonprofit organizations that give care to the homeless, whether it's shelter or food or training. For example, we give now $30 a day for such help. Well, that doesn't meet anywhere near the need, so I want to double that, and I want it to be more widely available. So the House will add stuff to the Senate bill, and since that's changed it, they have to vote again on it. We'll vote, and then hopefully it'll go to the president. But what we forget in all of this talk about veterans, sometimes we forget about their families. We forget about who's taking care of these young people, now some older people, when they return. And some of this is a full-time job for the rest of their life. And you got to give some help. If you're going to help the veteran, you got to help the caretaker. And that's what we have recognized in this bill. In fact, I mean, this bill just came over to us. I don't know the details. For example, if it only applies to OEF, OIF veterans, or it goes back further. I'll have to check on that. It should apply to every veteran. This is not just a problem for newer veterans. This has been a problem. Although, you know, in the war that's going on now in Afghanistan and Iraq, we have the highest survival rate of any war in history. That is, if you survive on the battlefield, we can get you into healthcare, you will have a 95% chance of living. That's incredibly high. But that means you are probably living with injuries that in previous wars you would have died from. That means we probably have to take care of you longer and more completely. So the whole notion of a caregiver has drastically changed with this war. More people have long-term injuries that require full-time help, but if there were people in earlier wars that has this, we should be taking care of them too. So I don't know specifically right now whether these bills cover all wars or just the more recent, but we'll try to fix that if it's just the more recent. As we look forward to the new year, and we wish all of you the best holiday season and New Year's. You know, no matter how hard you work, there's still more to do. And I'll just give you a couple examples of what we're going to be taking up in 2010. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have seen an incredible rise in the number of women who are participating as volunteers in this war effort, many of them in combat situations. But when they go for care in the VA system, it's to a system that was built for men. I mean, that was just the case, and you have to change a whole culture to make it welcoming to women. I'll just, just give you a few examples. Some women walk into a VA hospital, and the men sitting in the lobby start giving catcalls. Like a stereotype construction people going by as they see a girl go by. I mean, that's unacceptable. Doctors may not respect the fact that women may have had injuries from combat. One woman went into a doctor and she had her arm blown off in Fallujah. And he thought it was from cancer because he couldn't conceive of a situation where a woman lost her arm in combat. Single moms may bring their children with them because they couldn't find a babysitter. And we know doctors sometimes refuse to see the woman because she has her kids there. So we're going to have to make sure child care facilities, for example, are available. So I have written, and we will look at early next year, what we call a Bill of Rights for women's veterans. What they should expect and what they are guaranteed, and what the VA has to provide to make sure women veterans are treated with the same high quality and respect and sensitivity that men have been treated. We've always had a problem in rural areas of America where there's less population to have ready access to quality VA care. They have to travel great distances to a VA hospital. We've established hundreds and hundreds, I think it's almost 1,000 now, clinics, community-based outreach clinics around the country, but they still don't reach into all rural areas. So we have to, what should we be doing in terms of allowing a veteran to use local medical resources, for example? Telemedicine should be more widely introduced. Maybe traveling clinics. So we've got to look at the rural veteran with a little bit more understanding of the problems that they have trying to reach healthcare. So we've got our work always cut out for us. We still have not met the mental health needs of our veterans of today and of going back to Vietnam. We got to do a lot more there too. But we will continue to fight for our veterans. Thanks so much to the Veterans Network.